This is the History Chapter 7 test. Number 1. What was America's first Constitution called? A. American Constitution. B. Articles of Confederation. C. Bill of Rights. D. Republic Plan. Number 2. Under the federal system, the supreme or final law of the land is A. The President. B. The Constitution. C. States. D. Court system. Number 3. What were supporters of the new Constitution called? A. Federalists. B. Nationalists. C. Anti-Federalists. D. Jeffersonians. Number 4. Which law banned the spread of slavery in the new territories of the West? A. Missouri Compromise. B. Northwest Ordinance. C. Declaration of Independence. D. Articles of Confederation. Number 5. One of the major concerns about the Constitution by the Anti-Federalist was A. It had no president. B. It lacked a checks and balances. C. It lacked a Bill of Rights. Or D. It had gave too much power to the states. Number 6. The Constitution had to be ratified or approved by how many states? 7, 13, 11, 9. Number 7. The system of sharing powers between the national government and the states is known as localism, feudalism, federalism, nationalism. Number 8. What allows each branch of government to control the actions of the other branches? Voting on a bill, the executive branch, vetoing, checks and balances. Number 9. Which branch of government has ultimate control over the other two? And here you have a chart with the 3 branches: legislative, which is the Congress or makes the laws, and that includes the Senate and the House. The executive branch carries out the laws, and that's the vice president. And as president, it's the vice president and cabinet. Here, the third one is the Supreme Court of the judicial laws, and they evaluate laws. And this is the Supreme Court and other federal courts. So who has the ultimate control over the other two? Is it A, legislative, B, executive, C, judicial, D, none of the above? Number 10. The book of essays explaining and supporting the Constitution was called what? A, the Federalist Papers. B, the Anti-Federalists. C, the Bill of Rights. D, the Spirit of Laws. Number 11. The President can check Congress through A, voting down, B, lobbying, C, overriding, D, vetoing. Number 12. Why were many leaders concerned that the Articles of Confederation were not working and needed to be changed or thrown out? It gave too much power to the national government. It allowed the national government to collect taxes. It weakened the ability of the national government to pay its debts. It created a strong army and navy. Number 13, refer to this timeline. It says, which event did not take place in 1787? Which of the following events did not take place in 1787? So here's 1787. Okay, in 1787, you have Shays' Rebellion, the U.S. Constitution was signed, a Northwest Ordinance passed. So which one did not take place? A, Shays' Rebellion. B, the U.S. Constitution was signed. C, the U.S. Constitution was ratified. Or D, the Northwest Ordinance passed. Numbers 13 and 14, you're going to identify if these quotes are A, anti-federalists, or F, federalists. Okay? The quotation below is a view held by either a federalist or anti-federalist. Identify which by indicating an A for anti-federalist or an F for federalist. Here's the quote by Patrick Henry. The Constitution will inevitably give the president the power of a king. His office is untested, and we cannot safely say that he will not abuse his power. A, anti-federalists. F, federalists. Number 15 is a quote from James Madison. Again, this quotation below is a view held by either a federalist or anti-federalist. Identify which by indicating an A for anti-federalist or an F for federalist. Here's what he says. A strong national government is necessary to protect the minority from the majority. A, anti-federalists. F, federalists. Number 16 through 20, you're going to match the definition with the term. Your terms are compromise, amendment, sovereignty, bicameral, unicameral. Number 16, the right of a country or state to rule itself and manage its own affairs. Compromise, amendment, sovereignty, bicameral, unicameral. Number 17, settlement of differences in which each side makes concessions or gives up something. Compromise, amendment, sovereignty, bicameral, unicameral. Number 18, this is a form of government having two legislative bodies. Compromise, amendment, sovereignty, bicameral, unicameral. Number 19, a change of wording or meaning in a law or bill. Compromise, amendment, sovereignty, bicameral, unicameral. Number 20, a form of government having a single or one legislative body. Compromise, amendment, sovereignty, bicameral, unicameral. Numbers 21 through 25, you're going to match the person with their accomplishment. You have George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, George Mason, James Madison, Roger Sherman. He proposed the need for a Bill of Rights to be included in the Constitution. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, George Mason, James Madison, Roger Sherman. He suggested the Great Compromise. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, George Mason, James Madison, Roger Sherman. He was the author of the Virginia Plan. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, George Mason, James Madison, Roger Sherman. Number 24. He was the presiding officer of the Constitutional Convention. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, George Mason, James Madison, Roger Sherman. And 25, he was one of the authors of the Federalist Papers. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, George Mason, James Madison, Roger Sherman. What you need to do now is make sure that you turn this in, okay? And then you need to go back and you need to do the essay. Here is the essay question. You can use your notes for this part, so please do that, as this is worth 10 points. Essay. Using your materials and historical knowledge, answer the following question. Explain at least 3 of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and the problems this country faced because of those weaknesses. Be specific with the events and information. And then finally, make sure you choose yes or no if you had this read aloud. Clearly, if you're listening to this right now, you're going to choose yes.